Hi there. In this lecture we're going to have a look at an illustrative game, Magnus Carlsen, the current World Chess Champion, against Radoslaw Wojtaszek. This was played in the European Team Championship of 2015. So the key position we're looking at, well, in this game, which illustrates a theoretical line, d4 bishop f, d4 knight f6 bishop f4, d5 e3 c5. So Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces. We have c3 knight c6, and Magnus plays knight d2, so he's not using this knight yet. Black actually takes on d4, so this is a very interesting tension release which needs to be considered. One must take care with e takes d4. It's very important to actually play e takes d4 here. Just as a word of warning, some variations, c takes d4, black just plays queen b6, and it's very, very uncomfortable. For example, rook b1, bishop f5, end of game, hitting your rook. So just in case you're wondering. And if queen c2, the queen's just a sitting duck on the c file. For example, here, black's going to play, for example, like this, and it's just nasty. So, and queen b3, that's terrible as well. They just fracture your structure. If you take with the knight, it's just leading to a lot of pain, basically. If you take with the pawn, it's just horrible structure as well. But if you take with the knight, black's got all sorts of great opportunities here. For example, knight e4, e6, bishop b4 later. It's just very, very comfortable. It's very passive for white. So the recommendation is definitely, in this position, you have to take e takes d4. We have bishop f5 usually, so the bishop's popping outside of the pawn chain. So this is what Radoslaw Wojtaszek played. And now Magnus plays queen b3, so he's trying to punish the bishop in its neglect of b7. It's logical. Queen c8, knight gf3, e6. And here is a key move. If you might have felt, well, what about safeguarding the bishop? So if h6 has been played, there is another Magnus Carlsen stem game, Carlsen against Wagner, in 2015 as well, with knight e5. So this could be a way for white to get an advantage, especially if black plays g5. For example, here Magnus had a really good position, and we may look at this game separately at some point in the course. So white stands well here and is underminable soon with the move f4. So white stood well there at move 22, and that was fine. So h6, yes, knight e5 is an interesting move here. And if e6, you have the option, at least, of bishop d3 to get rid of that light square bishop. And, you know, black has committed to extra weaknesses by playing h6, so getting rid of this bishop is at least equal anyway. So in this game, though, we have e6, and we have this theoretical possibility now of going for this bishop, because no h6 has been played. And this is actually what Magnus did. So why do we want to hunt down this bishop? In my view, if you get the light square bishop without a counterpart, it can do damage, especially on the light squares later. You need to be on the lookout for light square opportunities later on in the game if you get this small advantage to play with. So here, Wojtaszek played bishop e4. If he plays bishop g6, you can just snap this off, and here this position is quite nice, and this actually occurred in the game Vladimir Kramnik playing white against Sigurov in Doha 2015, and white went on to win from there. In fact, you know, g3 was good from Kramnik, you know, but here, for example, in that game, Kramnik committed to castling queenside, and the engines felt it was slightly risky actually in this position. White doesn't need to castle queenside here. It seems g3, so this is a neural network move here, innovation now, and you can actually neutralize the h-file pressure. So the cost of getting that bishop, yes, you've activated the black rook, and this is often quite dangerous. But with g3 here, and you can castle kingside and knight f3, it should be solid enough in this particular position, and you can try and claim a small edge eventually. Okay, so that is a way of playing it on bishop g6. You can still snap off this bishop. On bishop g4, you can actually chase the bishop basically to g6 like this and fianchetto, and this is potentially a nice edge with queen b5 here to reroute to the center quite niftily, but also provoke maybe an extra weakness from black potentially. So threatening things like knight c5, if the queen is evicted back, the c5 square is a bit sensitive, and in fact it seems as though you can play something like this, knight c5, and get the other bishop. So you've got the bishop pair here, and it's leading to an edge for white after b4. Both sides castle, for example, on a4. White has a definite small edge to play with. You have got the bishop pair. And the extra, you know, the double pawns means if you're undermined, you can always recharge this structure. It looks quite interesting, this position to play from. So all in all, there are ways and means of getting this light square bishop if black now doesn't make that contingency move, h6, which he didn't in this game. So Magnus did take on e4. We have knight takes e4. A point of consideration here is if d takes e4 is played, it seems best to play g3 to be able to maneuver knight g2 if needed. So bishop e7, knight g2, and if queen d7, knight e3, this position is quite nice for white, a small edge there. And if we look at this again with d takes e4 and consider the immediate knight d5, again knight g2 just in time. And if they take here and say play something like this, you've actually got d5 in this position. The knight actually supports d5. And if takes here, then bishop h3, and you're getting a nice position indeed, very clear advantage. And here, if they took on f4 instead, then d takes, and you're actually threatening c takes b7, for example, like this, crushing. So this is really nice stuff, it seems. In all these variations, it seems here, in the variations of this game, you know, white's going to get that light square bishop, and it seems with a technical advantage. It's the way to fight for a small advantage, to actually go and grab that light square bishop, as Magnus has done here. He retreats this knight now. We have bishop d6, and doesn't mind the swapping off the dark square bishops here. Bishop d3. So this is the bishop without the counterpart, and it's interesting to see how, you know, this opening suggestion is going to ripple through the middle game, etc., to really give it a full end-to-end test of the whole concept here that we're recommending earlier on. For me, yeah, there's certain neural network engines like Stoffles that once they get a bishop without a counterpart, they can do remarkable things with it. They can like sacrifice pawns later to really emphasize this kind of trump card, this bishop without the counterpart. So here we see queen c7, queen c2, and actually black is dissuaded from castling kingside. Black castles queenside. It's a very interesting decision. So clearly if black castles kingside, that pawn actually can be snapped off and the bishop retracted, thanks very much, and there's no real counterplay there. h6 might be more sensible, and if both sides castle here, this kind of position is potentially a small edge as long as you play violently here, because this structure is prone to the classic minority attack. The minority attack is when a minority of pawns is attacking a majority to inflict structural damage. So here the minority attack's aim is to leave this backward and leave this isolated. So here a quick reaction, it seems, with the violent g4 is totally appropriate actually, because otherwise you're going to be destroyed on the queen side. So here you get some kingside counterplay essentially. For example, like this is a way of getting some kingside counterplay. This is just a fictional example, but I'm hoping you can use the similar idea in your games if you're suffering this minority attack concept here. So this is a big advantage for white. White's really in the driving seat there for a winning game. If we go back earlier, if they tried to close up with, sorry, if they took here, then you could use this g file with king h1 and rook g1. So that seems fairly logical. or a transition if needed to a much better end game here, a pawn up. So there are ways and means in the side variations if black had castled kingside by the preliminary h6, but black castled queenside in this game, and Magnus castled kingside, so h6, a4, we have king b8, rook fe1, rook c8, queen drop back, rook h e8. So this is the kind of position, you know, Magnus Carlsen's using the London system for that small edge, but it's definite, it is a definite imbalance in the position. This bishop here, we see bishop f1, it tucks away for the moment, rook e7, rook c1, rook d8, rook e2, knight e4. We have now b4, so trying to emphasize perhaps the e5 square sometimes. So we have knight g5, knight e1, and now black actually plays e5. We have b5, knight a5. So this is a bit awkward, it seems, for a moment. Rook takes, d takes, queen takes. The key point now is revealed of white's play. That actually, can you guess what Magnus plays in this position, which kind of lights up a bit, the light squares a bit more. So white's play here, what would you play in this position? Okay, he exploits the pinned pawn with c4. We have knight e6, knight f3, queen f4, c takes d5. If c5 is played here, by the way, it may seem tempting for a moment, but knight b3 tactically. If takes, then, you know, taking the rook, and otherwise taking that pawn. So that would have been a mistake. So c takes d5. White's trying to open up these light squares. It doesn't matter about this virtual exchange of rooks, because now the light square points in black's position are quite dangerous. g3 gives opportunity sometimes when this bishop isn't pinned for bishop h3 across this diagonal. We have queen c5, so that basically unpins the bishop. And now we have queen d7 looking at f7. White does have a significant edge here. We have queen f8. If knight c4, yeah, then Magnus just takes the f7 pawn, thanks very much, and white's got a big advantage. So queen f8, we have knight e5 hitting f7 again. And black's very vulnerable here. This knight's kind of stranded at the moment. We have knight c5 hitting the queen. The queen just goes to d5, very powerful square for the queen. Looking at f7 still, king c7 is played. If b6, then there's knight takes f7. If f6, then actually, can you see what white plays here? Check all your forcing moves here. Prioritize forcing moves. What would you play with white? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here. Okay, one of the more cooler moves here is queen takes c5. So temporary queen sack. So yeah, it's all very nice there. So black actually, after king c7 though, yeah, he drops a pawn for a moment. Knight takes a4, regaining his pawn. Okay, so still 4 pawns each, but white has this dangerous weapon here. Queen e5 check. King b6, very awkward. If king c8, the dangerous weapon is revealed with bishop h3 check, mate. So the king goes to b6, and we have knight d6 now. And this is very dangerous now. White has a big threat in this position relating to black's king safety. After knight c5, can you guess the final move of the game? Creating what I'd call a killer common square. So white's playing win here. How do you finish off? Try and coordinate these two pieces. How would you do that with a killer common square emerging here with the next move? Okay, knight e8, and you've got that killer common square. c7, you're threatening queen c7. Checkmate. And the game actually ended here. If, yeah, the game ended here after knight e8. If queen f7, then queen d6 check, and white can win this knight. Black has a little tactic here to note. Queen takes f2, but it's not sufficient. This little tactic is still, it's a piece down. White's winning this position. So I'll take you to the game M position. So this is a very important example game from a theoretical perspective. You see what you need to do here if they don't play h6. Actually, you do need to go for that bishop. To recap, so try and go for that bishop, and you can see how dangerous the bishop can be later. In this game, you know, black castled queenside exotically. We saw a variation with h6 and black castling kingside. If they do that, take king safety out of the equation and make it more about structure. In the variation we saw you can play quite dangerously on the king side if they go for your structure with minority attack. That's a key point there as well. We also saw some key points in some variations with the knight coming back to g2. So this game example and its variations are worth reviewing for this particular variation, which is used quite a lot at a high level. This c takes d4 move at move 5 in this variation. So just to recap there, d4, knight f6, we get this key position. It could have arisen after d5 as well, of course, but we get this key position where they're playing this early c takes d4. So we're taking to the center. If they put the bishop out to the pawn chain, we try and punish that. We play this, and now if they play this, we're going for that bishop with knight h4. This is the recommendation move. Okay, I hope you will get a small advantage in this line and crush your opponents later, celebrating this bishop without the counterpart. Okay, thanks very much. Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed my free sample lecture, and you might want to check out my course, Kingscrusher TV/London system, and that is with a discounted code. So this is a great course with approaching over 850 students, nearly 848 at the time of this recording. So this covers everything that can be thrown at you when you play the London system. I've covered all the main kind of system replies from black, including even outrageous moves which you might have to face as well in the final chapters. So quite a lot of content here, over 20 hours of video content, approaching 21 hours, 124 lectures, 13 sections. So everything you want to know about the London system. It's a very good opening in terms of cost benefit for getting a position you can play with, a solid position, and you can spend more of your time on chess working on your tactics and your end games as well, instead of wasting your time maybe learning tons of sharp opening theory which might never turn up. So with the London system, it's kind of ironclad guarantee. You know, you can use it in your games with white, and you know you can get a safe position with the white pieces without too much fuss, and you can improve other weak links potentially of your chess understanding, like spend time doing tactics training, endgame training, etc. So it's a great thing in my view in terms of improving your chess generally, even though some critics might argue, well, you don't get a variety of pawn structures. That's not true. This system tells you how to adjust the standard triangle depending on what the opponent does. So you do get, in fact, an experience of different pawn structures if you want to be more ambitious and use the recommendations of this course. So I hope you check it out. Thanks very much.